Hey, Lawrence here. Another quick take episode today. Today we're talking about what it takes to build a company, an epic company, not just a small pie shop. So we're going to run through the pros and cons and some of the personality traits, the psychology and the strategy on running a company and building a company from the ground up.
Can you describe your journey from having an idea to launching your company?
Yeah, good question. So I think I would say lots of people have an idea, right? And there's very few that execute against it though. And normally the first few ideas are the wrong ideas. But you've got to go through the learning. So what that means is you've got to fail. So I remember being pretty young, running 2 or 3 businesses, just small little businesses as a kid in my teenage years, and failing time and time again. By the way, you don't want to do that. If you can come up with an idea and a concept and be successful the first time around, I think that's great. You know, these people say, oh, you have to fail to succeed. Well, I think that's sort of bullshit. I think organically you'll do that. I think you will fail, but imagine if you couldn't. Just imagine if you couldn't, how fast you could get there without having to fail 5 or 6 times across 3 or 4 years. That means you're way ahead of the game. So how do you do that? Well, seek advice, put yourself around good people, and read from those who have done it before you. So there's many people that have walked the path before you. They've done the business that you're thinking of. They've written the model, done the strategy, know the sales, know the marketing, know how to execute, deploy, and what their market share should be, where they should sell, and who their core client is. You don't need to figure that out. It's already being done. So you need to go and find the data, read the data, and execute against that. Find a similar market, similar niche, and I would do that. That would be my advice.
What were your initial challenges when starting your company, and how can you help other people overcome them?
Yeah, look, the first thing that you need to understand that starting a business is tough. And by the way, the caveat to that is everything is your fault, right? So if you want to be a business leader or a successful business owner, you've got to understand one simple core fact, is that everything is your fault. You cannot blame the accountant, the market, the government, the economy. So what that requires is for you to be resilient, right? So at all costs, whatever it takes, right? Be relentless is something that I say a lot. And I think about a lot actually, and what that means to me personally, and what that would mean to execute against inside a business with staff and people walking around it. But I'm pretty relentless, and I think you have to be. I think if you're a person who is strong and resilient, you should run a business. I think if you're not strong or resilient, you shouldn't, because you'll fail. Because it's not about the execution of the P&L or the balance sheet, or even the product, getting a product market fit, or a minimum viable product. Well, great, anyone can do that. But the strength lies in being able to find the people who can help you deliver that, letting go of the ego and giving them some control of that. That's the first thing. The second thing is every day you're going to get hit. It's going to be something, and it's going to be big. You're going to walk in and everything will go wrong. And if you can't walk strongly through that, you'll fail. It does take time to grow that, I think. I think some people have it and they're born with it. But not everybody. That's why they say, 95% of businesses fail in the first 3 years. Well, it's not the idea, it's not the concept, the product, or the strategy. It's the individual. They make bad decisions, and they can't handle it, right? Because it's tough. You've got no one to talk to as a CEO or a founder. You're sort of on your own. Even if you're married, right? I don't know too many CEOs and founders who talk to their wives about their commercial problems, unless the wife's in the business, which is pretty rare these days. So it's strength and resilience would be the one thing I think that leaders and founders need to learn and put a lot of time into. And all the other stuff you can emulate from other people. That would be my take on it.
Reflecting on your experiences, what were some key lessons you learned in the early stages of your journey?
Yeah, some of the key lessons. There's quite a few of them, actually. How long do you have? And you better get me a pen and a pad, right? But, look, there's so many. If I was to lean into some of maybe the top 5, right? I think the first thing is education. People dive into business and don't educate themselves on what business actually is, like understanding it, right? Like, they think a business is a journey of, I'm going to work for myself and be my own boss, I can do whatever I want, I'm going to earn more money and blah, 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 blah. Well, all of that's bullshit, because in actual fact, all you're doing is getting a job at the start where you're working twice the amount of hours you were working before, right? So you want to be careful of that. So education would be the first thing you need to figure out. You need to be careful of people, right? There's a lot of people in the market that will take advantage of founders at the early days, whether it be they want some shares, or they say they're going to deliver this and they're going to charge you this, and you think it's going to be great, and then it falls over, and then your capex goes through the roof, and you go out of business because you're overcapitalized, you've got no money left. I think there's a lot of liars and bullshitters in the market who are telling founders what they want to hear, and then I think founders need to vet that properly. If I was to do it all over again, I would probably structure a company differently than what I did at the start. I would certainly have an advisory board, and that may be 1 or 2 people, external to the business. I would have set up a board a lot sooner than what I did, external to the business, and pay those board members, right? So those are the people who would give you guidance and even plug you into markets that you're actually not aware of. The fourth thing is business plan. If you don't have a business plan, it's not a business. That's the bottom line. So, and inside that, and a business plan is not strategy, by the way. A business plan is different. Strategy is a different vertical inside a business plan, which is related to execution. A business plan is what are you going to do for 12, 24, 36 months, and why. Once you've got the why right, the strategy will show you how to execute against it. Prioritizing the certain things that you need to in a business. And the last thing is you need to keep your mind on point, right? And what I mean by that is that stress can come pretty quickly. I just said that at the start of this conversation, right? But I can't say it enough. We should write it in the sky and leave it there, because it's so fucking important that most people don't understand it, is that emotion will overcome you and your business will shake and you go out. Like you'll turn the lights off. Because that's probably the most important thing to manage the other 4, right? So that would be my advice. Look, there's so many different things that you would need to be across, but you need to seek counsel and seek advice from those who are the right people. Don't ask your mum for advice if you're a 19-year-old founder, and don't ask your accountant because they're focused on scarcity, not growth. They're there to save you money. They're not there to make you money. Money in a bank account, like I've said before, is a waste of money. It needs to be invested back into the business. All these sorts of things you'll need to learn. Don't knock down that first story and build a second one when you should build upon the first one. People just start another business on the side because they think that that's the right thing to do, and they get distraction with the shiny object. And the sales in the other business starts going down and they lose track of it. That's another key thing, unless you have it all the time. But look, there's a lot of stuff. If you want to know more, leave a comment, and I'm happy to sort of come back to anyone and have a deeper conversation around that.
Let's talk about funding and finance. How would you suggest to, fund or finance your first company?
Rob a bank. No, don't do that. Yeah, good question. You want to bootstrap. If there was anything I could say to a founder, is that you don't have a business until you've tested it in the market, right? So you should be in a position where you should bootstrap that. And if you don't know what bootstrap means, you should Google it. Just come up with the cash yourself, borrow it from your parents, I don't know. Use your savings. Don't use all of it, use a percentage of it, test the market. And once you've got something that's viable, by the way, no one's going to invest in your business if you don't have any sales. Like if it's not a proven business that's showing that you can build a product, that you've got users, right? And that it makes money. Now, it doesn't have to make profit, it just needs to churn revenue. No one will give you a cent. The bank won't lend you any money because you don't have a P&L yet. An angel investor won't give you any money unless they know you and they believe in you. But if your P&L says nothing, they'll give you nothing for it. So you can have the best idea on the planet, but if you can't build 12 months with a P&L out of it, it's not worth a cent. It's just a good idea, right? So my advice would be to bootstrap it, spend your own money. So if you're working in a job looking to pivot and start a company, whether it be a product or a service, save the cash, stack it, and then go in all in for 12 months, all in for 12 months, and one or two things will happen. You'll fail, you'll lose that money, but you can go back to work, right? And it hasn't cut into the mortgage or the family budget or whatever. Or you go all in regardless, and then you just see if you fall off the edge of the world, right? Which means you give up your job. As a byproduct of that, you might work part-time, and then, it's really hard to do that though, because I think if you're going to do it, you should commit to it. So even if you're broke, that means you're on 2-minute noodles. You're not going on the holiday for that year, and you're not buying the fancy clothes, the watch, or leasing the Lamborghini for the weekend. You got to get rid of that bullshit, because that's never going to work. So what are you going to give up? What are you going to sacrifice? It's really important to understand. People don't get that. So yeah, I would bootstrap would be my first thing. I'd use savings. I'd commit to 12 months, and I'd test it. If you're going in with a business partner, you should consider that. Like, instead of going in on your own, why wouldn't you get a friend who's got a skill set that you don't own, which might be sales or marketing, or could be tech and coding, and they put in some money as well. Then you lower the risk, right? Otherwise, it's all going to be on you, because probably in most cases you're going to fail. So you need to be happy with failing. But that would be my advice: bootstrap all the way, 100%. I would not borrow money to start and invest in an idea that hasn't made 1 cent yet.
Cool. Say I've started my new company, things are going well, I've got a few sales coming in, there's some revenue, profit to spend. Where should I be investing that?
Yeah, two ways to look at that. There's divestment and investment, right? They're two different things when you're running a business. Divestment is investing across your business to a point, right? Investment is looking at something additional that'll bring revenue or sales into the company. So you should do both. Your business plan will tell you that, by the way. That was the importance to have a business plan, and then have a strategy attached to the business plan, and that'll guide you where to put your money. Because you should be investing in what's being planned, right? And if it doesn't work, you go back to the plan, you alter the plan, you might have to pivot somewhere, and then you pull that money and you invest or divest back into that area, right? That would be my advice. It's pretty simple. I think people invest emotionally in their businesses, and they should stop doing that. Investment should be driven by metrics and by mathematics. You need to look at the P&L and the balance sheet, speak to your accountant. In a startup, I would speak to the accountant every 14 days. That's what I did. Well, that's what I did when I failed my 3rd time. But they will give you guidance on where they think the investment should go. And the reason why you want it from an accountant, it's not because they're looking to increase revenue for you, but they're looking to protect the money that you have, right? So once you've got that right, then you push the accountant out the door and you say, great, we're going to do 30% of what he said. We're going to do 30% divest across this way and 30% to invest for growth. That would be my advice. So a third is my principle that I use for investment. I never spend all my money on one thing. And you want to have cash reserves for when it goes wrong, right? Because you don't want to put the business at risk. So follow the business plan, follow the strategy, get your advice from your accountant, make it every 14 days or every 30 days, and don't make decisions weekly, make them every 30 days, so monthly, right? So there should be fortnightly reviews to monthly reviews, and then execute against that. The first thing I would always invest in is how to increase sales, like 100%. That's my go-to. But if you're a product business and you're distributing or dropshipping product to customers, and you look at your Google rankings and it's 1 because when they get your product, it breaks or it falls apart or it doesn't work, well, then you've got to go back to the drawing board, right? You've got to invest money in product development. So you have to go to product market fit again, right? So, or minimum viable product. So you just have to figure that out. Product is really important if you're building a physical product that you have to ship to a customer. Services, you're investing money in operations to ensure that your workflow means that you get Google reviews. Now I say Google reviews because it's a pro indicator. Look, it's just one of those things. You're always going to get people that are going to hate your product or your service. But if you didn't have a team or staff where you couldn't survey, you have to look at something, right? Otherwise, you're not going to know. You'll get comments on Facebook feeds, Instagram. You'll get Google rankings and emails from customers. So that should guide where you put your money put it where it's broken and put a percentage of it, which I think should be a third of profitability, into scaling revenue, which is sales and marketing. You need a marketing strategy. What does that look like? And you need to sell things. So I would invest in that. But before you do all of that, my side note would be invest in yourself first. You should always be doing that, because if you're not invested in yourself, the business won't see the benefits. That would be my take.
What personal habits or mindsets do you believe have contributed to your success?
Habits and mindsets. Work ethic. I think about it all the time. I think if you don't have it, don't go and work for yourself, because you're lying to yourself, right? Really, if you're not prepared to put on the work, like if you're not prepared to work 100 hours a week or 120 hours a week at the start, you should never start. Like if you think you're going to work 60 hours and everything is going to be okay, well, you're wrong. That's not going to happen ever. So if you think there's any major company on this planet where the founder wasn't working 120 hours a week at the start, that's completely inaccurate. Now, every time I talk about work ethic, I think of Tim Ferriss, and I don't know why, right? So this 4-hour work week thing is bullshit. He knows it. He thinks that if you outsource everything, that everything will be okay. Name me one company on this planet that you know of, who's a $1 billion company, who doesn't have an office and staff. Right, you can't outsource everything. It's certainly at the start. So work ethic would be my first go-to. I think psychology would be my second, right? I think you need to develop yourself, and you need to do so with resilience. And I just said that at the start, but I'll say it again, mate. It's so critical. Like, if you can't handle the tough days, you're sick, right? If you're a founder and you're sick, what do you think you're going to take the day off? It never happens. You can't do that. You have to turn up every day, feeling the worst, and still be able to lead people, motivate people, be focused, and get shit done, right? So if you've got a 26 degree temp, you got to get out of bed at 5:30 a.m. and you've still got to go to work. So I think people should think about that, because I think people don't want to do that anymore. And look, that's cool, no harm, no foul. You can, go on your holidays to the beaches and, relax. But that's certainly not what it takes to run or build a business. You do that later on in life, sure. But once you've made the money and the business has security, is scalable, and can run self-sufficiently without you in it, but that's going to take you 7 years, 10 years maybe. But normally it's 7 years, right? It normally takes 7 years to get to that point. It used to be 10 years. I think it's, with technology and automations, it's come down. I remember reading an article, and I think Karen Ray wrote that, and I think it's come down to 7 years. I agree with that 100%. So unless you're prepared to grind it for 7 years, I don't do it. So that would be my second thing. That's also attached to work ethic though. But the second part of that I was trying to get to was psychology. Man, it's tough, like super tough. Sometimes you want to blow your brains out. That's how tough it gets, right? That's a little bit tongue in cheek, but it gets hard to the point where you don't want to get up, where it hurts. And you just want to hide under a blanket. And I'm pretty strong. Like, there's not many things that can knock me. So I've been through a lot of stuff and grew up pretty tough. But if you think you've had a bad day working in your nice cushy job for 9 to 5, where you get 4 weeks off every year, think again. So that would be my thing. You need to be tough. You need to be strong. And if you're not, don't start a business, because it's one of the hardest things that you could ever do.
How do you manage the stress and uncertainty of running a company?
Well, I normally hide under a blanket and just hope that everything's going to be okay. There's two things there, stress and uncertainty, right? They're both sort of integrally linked. There's some synergy between those two things. Well, the thing about stress, it is simply a decision. And if you don't believe with that, you need to change your mindset, because it is. So what I would do is I would learn about how to manage it, which you can do in books, right? So that's what I did. I did courses and I read a lot of books about psychology and how to manage stress because I knew that that was really important to money. So to earn money requires the management of stress. That's one way you should look at it. Because if you can't manage the stress, the money won't follow. So if you want to have abundance and you want prosperity, a byproduct of that is managing your psychology. A byproduct of psychology is managing your stress. So, so the absence of stress normally leads to prosperity, is what I'm saying. So, dealing with stress, well, you don't want to deal with it. You don't want it to install itself inside you, is the first thing, right? Because when you do, it becomes enabled. So you need to cut it off at the pass, as they say, and don't lean into it. Because I think people lean into it, stress. I think, you know, they say comments like, oh, this is going to be so stressful. Oh, yeah, this is going to be great, but oh, there's going to be so much stress. You know, they already start to enable the stress component by the communication and the words and the attitude that they have. So there's a couple of things you can do there, and that's to identify stress before it happens, cut it off at the pass, and then if it does get through, know how to manage it, and you'll do that through books. There are thousands of books on how to manage stress. And they're easy to get, right? So they can just get delivered right to your door and you can open it up and read it, or go to audible.com and listen to it. So there's no excuse. That would be my take on stress. What I do though, I do lots of things. I make sure I have a good diet. I think that's really important. I exercise on a regular basis, so I'm going to the gym, 3 or 4 times a week. I'll go and do other therapies around physical health, including biology, and that might be the right supplements to support a healthy lifestyle. I don't normally get sick, so because I maintain a pretty good healthy lifestyle, it doesn't normally happen. I think I was sick back in 1980. That was a joke. But I don't normally get sick. It's because I truly believe that you can overcome the general average day sickness with mindset. Because I think I've done it, which is weird. And even when I am sick, physically, I don't feel sick. Certainly not from a psychological perspective. So I can just drive through, right? But that would be my thing. A good healthy life, a good physical fitness regime, a good diet. Those are the things that I do to minimize stress, or eliminate stress, I should say, not minimize it. And then I read. So my mind is focused on things moving forward, not focused on things moving sideways or backwards. So if you're looking into the future and that is creating stress and anxiety, you should stop doing that. Because it hasn't happened yet. So you need to come up with some simple principles of psychology that are written in books. You need to write them down, you need to learn them, you need to create a belief system around them. And once you have your belief system in place, you should lean into that all the time. Because it's the belief system that is going to make you take the wrong path. Because it's saying things to you that are negative based on scarcity and negative outcomes. And people do it every single day of the week. 100 times a day, and they don't realize it. But when you compound that, what happens is it starts to become your life. You know those people when you're in the lift and all they do is complain about their job, the weather, their dog, the shitty TV show they watched on some stupid reality TV show, and they're talking like about nothing. You know, that's not healthy. So if you want to live in the real world and not on the matrix, you need to create real information around how you live every day. So get the right information about health, get the right information about mindset and psychology, get the right information about biology, get the right information about business, get the right information about how to manage yourself personally, and you will be fine. Now, all you need to do is believe it, and that's going to be up to you. I've coached people who, no matter what I said to them, no matter what book they read or I gave to them to read, they will be poor for the rest of their lives, which is unfortunate because their belief system is locked down. Mate, they are never going to change. and because they don't believe they can. So that's a bit of a problem. So it's a long way around it, but that would be my response to that. Is it again comes down to education, right? Mitigation through education. So yeah, that would be my answer.
How important is emotional intelligence when running a company?
Yeah, emotional. Is there such a thing? Emotional intelligence. Yeah, right. Yeah, pretty important. Emotional intelligence is attached to communication, right? Effective communication, understanding the tolerances of people and how people think, react is really important, I think. I think really dynamic people have it. I think leaders have it. CEOs normally have it. People who are in senior management leadership roles would normally have it. That's why they're in those roles. There's two reasons why someone gets promoted to a senior role. It's because they're good at a technical thing or they're good at dealing with people. That's it. There's no other way around it. So if a sales guy is good at making money, they normally promote him to a sales manager. But that's completely the wrong thing to do because they might have poor EQ, which means, well, maybe not in sales because they have to communicate to customers, but just hypothetically, it doesn't mean that they'll make a good manager because they might be fucking terrible at communicating and leading staff, right? Because they're very focused on themselves, and making money is a byproduct of that. It's a byproduct of ego, it's a byproduct of working on yourself and working for yourself to a point. But when you pivot into a group environment, EQ is really critical because you need to understand how people are feeling when they lie to you. And that happens all the time. So, when you ask somebody a question, they go, oh yeah, that's great, let's do that. And then 2 minutes later, they're complaining behind your back. What that does is creates a false environment and a false economy and a false culture. And leaders need to understand how to see that. EQ is a component of that. Emotional intelligence is so critical. So there's lots of different types of intelligence, right? Psychometrics, there's, economy, right? Like understanding how math works and how to run a P&L is a different sort of intelligence as opposed to how to communicate to a team and motivate them, as opposed to how to sell a product and market, as opposed to how to organize compliance and run age debtors, right? They all come with different psychologies and all different elements of EQ and IQ. So EQ will see the IQ before it happens, so to speak. Like I can tell, with years of experience, I can tell who has EQ and who doesn't on the basis of the words they use, the phrases they say, and how they administer themselves in public. Or even in private, right? You can tell in an interview who's someone who's got EQ just by how dynamic they are in their communication. Because normally what happens is their communication is deeper than someone who does not have it. And you can ask psychometric questions to unpack that. It's very easy to see it, as long as you know the right questions. Like you could go to psychometricquestions.com and there's a whole bunch of stuff in there. I just made that website. I don't know if that exists. It probably does. If it doesn't, someone should build it. But there's certain questions that you can say to somebody that will trigger certain responses that'll tell you whether they're IQ based or EQ based or both, right? I think there's a test called the dark triad, which has 2 different sorts of elements in that testing process as well. So you could go check that out. But there's thousands of tests on the planet where you can unpack IQ and EQ, but I think it's critical. I wouldn't have anyone as a senior leader if they didn't have EQ. That would be my bottom line. And I probably wouldn't have anyone in sales who are all about EQ, because they need to have product knowledge, right? And they need to know numbers and they need to know their metrics. And sometimes high EQ people can be a little bit more emotional, and I don't want that in my sales team. So yeah, there's a whole bunch of elements to that, but my advice would be, again, go to the market, research, and you'll find the answer you want, really.
Can you describe your approach to personal development and learning?
Yeah, I've spoken about this before. I schedule it, right? So I'm now on a routine where it's just a byproduct of my life. As soon as I wake up in the morning till I rest my weary head, I'm learning. And I do that a whole bunch of different ways. So I'll run you through that. And they're pretty simple, right? I schedule or I bookmark interviews on YouTube that I want to watch. So these are interviews from some of the best people on the planet, right? So I've been talking a lot about AI or AGI recently, and so what I'm doing is I'm finding those interviews during the day, or they're coming across my feed, and anything that's interesting I will bookmark it. By the way, buy YouTube Premium, people. It's $20 a month. You know what I mean? Just spend the money. It's an investment. So you can do that when you pay for premium. You can't do that if you don't. So people have to understand, spend the money, because it's so worth it. So I bookmark all these things. So what I do is, as soon as I get in the car and I start driving, I'm learning, right? So I'm listening to an interview. I always have 1 to 2 books that I'm listening to for the information that I need right now. So if I'm looking to increase sales, I'm listening to those books. If I'm looking to figure out how to do e-commerce, I'm listening to those books. So all of my data is around what I need, which is attached to my business plan and my strategy for the year, right? So it's not random. I just don't listen to random shit on YouTube. Like, there's no point, because you're just going to get confused, because you're going to listen to all these things that are going on, all this noise and these shiny objects. And then when you get to your business, inside your business, and you go to work, you don't have an arsenal of information that you can lean into and talk about. So you want to be very specific about what you're listening to, is my first thing. But yeah, YouTube first thing in the morning. I use Premium. I bookmark it. The next thing I do is I have a shelf of books at home. So if I've got any downtime, my relaxing time is reading. So I'll pick up a book and read a chapter, out of Tim Ferriss's 4-Hour Workweek. I'm joking, I wouldn't do that. But out of any book, right? But it's always about what I need. So I'm a bit of a serial podcaster. So I've got 3 or 4 guys that I listen to on podcasts, and 3 or 4 only. I do not listen to 50 guys on podcasts. And I don't probably normally listen to the most popular ones. I listen to very strategic business strategy podcasts. TED Talks are normally one of the things I dive into, but it's very technical and very specific. And it's normally about innovation. So I listen to a lot on innovation, what's happening in the future, so I can guide the business in the right direction. If I'm at the gym, I'm listening to a podcast. If I'm going for a run, I'm listening to a podcast or a book or an interview. There isn't any time in my day that I'm not educating myself. And then I'm doing courses, right? So I just finished a course, it was 10 hours. It took me 2 weeks, just, because I'm doing 30 minutes here, 30 minutes there. So I schedule my time in 30-minute increments. I don't normally do 60-minute increments anymore, because I've got to be across many things. So if I need to be across 50 things, I schedule at shorter time sets. Fewer things I schedule at higher time sets, if that makes sense. So you need to consider how you organize, right? So if I'm working on something, sometimes it's 15 minutes, I set a timer. As soon as that 15 minutes is done, I have to go to my next thing. So what happens is an hour task will take me 4 days, but I'm getting a whole other set of tasks done all at the same time in 4 days and not focusing on one thing. You cannot do one thing all day. You'll get no productivity and you won't be able to move forward. You'll fucking go crazy as well, because everyone's going to be complaining at you that nothing is getting done. And I see it in managers all the time. Teams start complaining because they say, oh, I've spoken to my manager about this and they've never gotten back to me. And normally what I find when I unpack it is the manager's doing one thing for 3 hours a day, so they're only doing 2 things a day, right? Because 6 hours later, their day is gone. So you have to, and it's okay to get back to someone with something small. At least they know that you're working on their project, right? And giving them some advice and some support, whether it be something small, not what they want, but they know that you're getting there. If you don't do that across long blocks of time, staff normally get pretty pissed at you. So that's what I do. I'm constantly learning. I'm constantly, no matter what I'm doing, I'm even listening to podcasts while I'm sleeping. I'm joking, I'm not doing that. But if I could, I would definitely do that, because I think that would be valuable, because I'm sleeping for 6 hours. Like, that's crazy. What a waste of time. Yeah, that's what I do, and that's how I learn. I don't need to do 6-month courses. I think people should do that, but I've done my time, right? So I'm now specific little brackets of learning.
What keeps you going? Why do you do it?
Why do I do it? It's a pretty good question. Yeah, I do it for 2 reasons. I want to build a legacy, I guess, for my family. especially for my daughters. That sort of drives me. So they've got something that I never had when I was young. So I do it for that reason, and I do it to contribute, because I think if we're going to be on this planet, we've got to contribute, right? That's why we're here. Well, that's why I think we're here, and that's why I think what we should all be doing is contributing. If you can contribute, you can build a company, create wealth and success, take people on a journey, and contribute to your local community, to society in general, or the planet. You should do it. I think you have an obligation to do so. So I see this as an obligation, and if I can support, I guess, my daughters, and they can go on to do great things as well, I'm pretty goddamn happy about it. So that's why I do it. Cool, are we done? Because I want to go get a pie. And I'm like, okay, cool. Look, I hope you found something that you liked, or that you think may work for your business. Love to hear any comments. If you got them, just drop them through, and we're happy to come back and answer any of those comments. If you haven't already, look, we're a non-profit venture, so click the subscribe button, hit the bell, wherever that may be on the screen. We'd love for you to subscribe. We try to push out as much content and good content as we can. And we've got some great interviews coming up with some pretty awesome entrepreneurs and artists. So stay tuned for that. Really appreciate your watching, and look forward to speaking to you next time. Thanks.